This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 13 of the Dressage Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network, presented by Equestrian Life, exclusive coverage of the world of dressage. This week we have Desi Dillingham and British Dressage. We would like to thank our sponsors, Equestrian Life. They can be found at equestrianlife.com and Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com. This is Chris Stafford in Lexington, Kentucky.
And I'm Heather Blitz in Esbjerg, Denmark, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show presented by Equestrian Life.
Well, hi Heather, how are you doing this week?
I'm great, Chris. Welcome back. We've missed you.
Oh, that's very nice of you, but I know that Reese did a great job stepping into my shoes, and she's going to take over the chair too while you're gone, because you're heading off very soon, aren't you, on tour?
I am. I'm getting ready to go for about 3 weeks of straight teaching in the States. I think there's about 115 lessons I'm going to get through there. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I have 2 new locations, which I'm really excited about, and then 3 other locations that I've been to on a regular basis. So I get to see old friends and new. So really looking forward to that. So now that you're back in town, I'm going to be heading out of town.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we at least got to, do one more show before we hand over the reins again to Reese. And again, thanks, Reese, for joining us over the last 2 weeks and standing in for me. And it's going to be fun having her back while you're gone too. So be interesting. Dynamics to change her co-host, and I think we'll do that again in the future because you get so busy, Heather. We don't want to put too much of a burden on you, so we might be mixing that up a little bit and see if we can't get some guest hosts from around the world even.
Yeah, I've got to share the airwaves a little bit, right?
There you go. There you go. Well, we have an interesting show for you this week. We were able to catch up with someone who's really the doyen of British dressage and has been the driving force behind it for many years now. That's Canadian Desi Dillingham. Many of you in Europe will know of Desi. She's vice president and former chair of the British Dressage and also president of the British Horse Society now. She was awarded an MBE for her services to equestrian sport by the Queen, and she's also head of British breeding as well. And she's going to come on and tell us really about the story, how she got involved and how she's really changed the shape of British dressage to the place it has now in the global sport that we have, and really making its mark finally. So we're really looking forward to having her on, Heather.
Yeah, you've told me a bit about her, and I'm very excited to hear about what she has done so far and what she has in store for the future in British dressage. So that's going to be an exciting interview.
Well, before we get to that, Heather, we have got some items of news this week that we just want to touch on, and starting off really with the news from the U.S. Here about the new chef de keep and technical advisor that's been appointed, and that's Anne Gribbons. And I think there was a little bit of confusion as to what her role would be, and the role of Morton Thompson, who was also named in this mix. So we just wanted to clarify that the Eligible Athletes Committee of the U.S. Equestrian Federation that conducted the interviews with all the 3 final candidates, and that was Anne Gribbons, Morton Thompson, and Robert Dover, and made their recommendations to the High Performance Dressage Committee to name Anne as the full-time chef de keep and technical advisor, which would be a comparable position with that in eventing, which is Mark Phillips, of course, and George Morris for show jumping. And since they will have the same roles, they gave her the same title to be consistent across all the Olympic disciplines. So they're no longer using the term of team trainer within those Olympic disciplines. But of course, her appointment is subject to approval, and it has to go through the USEF's executive committee and finalize negotiations with the CEO. But we wanted just to clarify that is a process. It's a bit like the Supreme Court justice here in the US having to having to go through the confirmation process. And so that's taking place now as we speak. And at the moment, we understand that no role for the Danish dressage trainer Morten Thompson has been approved, and though an official function is not at this point ruled out. So we just wanted to clarify that. Heather, I know you've been part of the committees, haven't you? You're on the USEF committee yourself.
Yes, I am. I'm on the eligible athletes committee and have gotten a chance to put in my 2 cents. And I'm just excited about the prospect of having a chef and technical advisor and another person as the possible trainer. So I think it's an exciting thing for us to change. We've had held by the same person, Klaus Balkenhol, for the past 8 years, and so this will be a really different way for us to be organized, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Terrific. Well, we hope to get Anne Gribbons on the show here when the dust is settled and she's been confirmed with her appointment, and look forward to talking to her and hearing about her plans for US dressage now with the World Equestrian Games just around the corner. So we look forward to getting Anne on the show in the very near future. But meanwhile, we have some news from your neck of the woods in Denmark. Heather, you remember that beautiful mare, that grey mare, Blue Horse Matinee, ridden by Andreas Helgstrad? Of course, she's been retired to stud now as a full-time brood mare. You remember that she injured herself when she headed over to Vegas for the World Cup, and she had to be scratched there from the competition. Well, it appears that the 12-year-old mare didn't really recover as they hoped, and not to get back into competitions. But the advantage of being a mare, of course, is that they can retire her very gracefully to stud as a brood mare. But she'll be missed. What a sight she was, wasn't she?
Yeah, she hit the world in a way that I don't know of any other dressage horse that has. I think there's a video of her on YouTube that has just millions and millions of hits, and people who know nothing about dressage at all know about Matinee. So she's really, quite a horse in the history of dressage, and really fantastic piaffe passage. So, and what a nice thing when you have a mare that you can retire them and they still have such a bunch more even to offer as a broodmare, and hopefully that they don't have any problems getting her in foal and having her foal out. And she's only 12, so think of how many babies she could have. So that's and I've been wondering what's been happening with Matinee, so I was happy to see that bit of news and that she's got that future ahead of her, and really excited to see what she produces.
Really, absolutely. As nice as you say, for her to be able to have a second career.
Yeah.
Well, talking about career emergence again, we hear that Painted Black is back. Anki's famous partner, who was injured earlier this year, and he left the competition circuit for a while. Well, he's made a comeback, and apparently she's delighted with him. He scored a 76.3 in a Grand Prix in Belgium just last week. So that's good news for Anki, and I think she's feeling the competition heating up again, and of course heading towards the Europeans in just a very few short weeks here. So I'm sure she'll be glad to get him back fit and sound and back in the arena. Well, we also want to congratulate Lauren Samis. She had a great weekend too up in Saugerties at the show there in New York State. The Pan American team gold medalist and individual silver medalist with Sagacious HF. She really withstood the heat up in New York there last weekend and won the Grand Prix Freestyle. So a great win for her in that CDI 3-star. Good luck to her again. And she obviously is going to be trying to catch the selectors' attention. I think that's a great win for her, isn't it, Heather?
Yes, that's a fantastic score, and it's only a 10-year-old horse. I know he was just was it last year in the Intermediate Championships, and then in the Pan Am Games. Was this one of his beginning Grand Prix? Do you know, Chris, if he's been much in the Grand Prix ring, or is this just pretty much his debut?
I don't know if it's his debut, but I think it's got to be one of his biggest successes at this level.
Well, there's bound to be a great future with those two. She's a great rider, and it's just a fantastic horse, and the two of them are just really made for each other, so we'll have to definitely keep our eye on them as the WEG comes around next year.
Yep, good luck to them, and that really wraps up our news for this week. And before we get to our first guest on the show, we really want to take a moment here to hear from our sponsors, Equestrian Life.
It is fantastic to have our friends at Equestrian Life as the title sponsors for the Dressage Radio Show. If you have not been to Equestrian Life yet, you need to go. In addition to being the official social community for the Horse Radio Network, it is one of the fastest growing horse communities on the internet. It is truly the Facebook for horse people. The goal of EquestrianLife.com is to bring equestrians together and to provide them with the breadth and depth of information and tools they need to learn and connect with other horse lovers who share the same passion. EquestrianLife.com is a fun, inviting website that strives to provide its members with a world-class experience that fosters the expression of all the ways people enjoy their horses and the people who are part of the horse world. EquestrianLife.com's social media platform provides users with cutting-edge applications and tools, such as people and horse profiles, social Q&A, status updates, messaging, photo uploading, groups, comments, blogs, expert high-definition videos, directories, birthday reminders, alerts, messaging, and on and on and on, in addition to their partnership with the Horse Radio Network. This community is designed by horse people for horse people and is filled with educational and entertaining video and audio all about our horses. Right on over to Equestrian Life today. Sign up for free and tell all of your friends. If you love horses, EquestrianLife.com is the place to be.
Well, thank you again to our sponsors, Equestrian Life, the presenting sponsor for the Dressage Radio Show. Well, we're coming to our guest on the show this week, Heather, who, as I said earlier, has really been the doyen of British dressage. She's now the president of the British Horse Society. She was awarded the MBE, which is the Member of the British Empire, for her voluntary services to equestrianism just earlier this year by the Queen. And she's been, as I say, member of the British Horse Society now for a while. She's been very involved with them, but her work with the British dressage is legendary. I hope one day that she will write her biography, because it's a fabulous story of, you know, energy and enthusiasm and passion for the sport and how she's turned it around. And so we'd like to welcome Desi to the show and, of course, honour her for her honour of being awarded the MBE. So let's listen to what Desi has to say. Okay, well, Desi Dillingham, well done. I really appreciate you joining us. You know, I know you have so much going on in your life, and we really appreciate you spending the time. And welcome to your first appearance, of hopefully of many, on the Dressage Radio Show.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here. Absolutely delighted.
Well, you know, your story is phenomenal. I hope you're going to think about writing your own memoirs one day, because, as we said in the introduction, you've really been the doyen of British dressage. And for the sake of our listeners who maybe don't know your story, how you got from Canada to the UK and got involved with the sport, tell us a little bit about how that all began, Desi.
I am Canadian from Montreal. My mother's dream was to ride Olympic 3-day. So I was born with a pony waiting for me and had the Olympic dream with us all our lives. Women were not allowed in the end to ride until 1960, Rome. And at that point, my mother had 4 children and she was too old. But we inherited the dream. I come from a family, we had 30 horses. We showed every minute of every day, every summer. My father was master for 25 years of our local hunt, the Lake of Two Mountains in Montreal. And we did horse shows every single weekend, all summer long, from the time I was born until I was in my early 20s.
So what took you to the UK?
I loved business. I rode in the World Horse Spectacular in Expo 67, and I ended up getting myself a job to help pay for my MGB, which my father gave me. He always said I had a 4-wheel personality. But I was one of Canada's top young riders, certainly in showing and in eventing, and I rode my first advance when I was about 14 or 15 and had to get special approval from the CEF because I was so young. So as a family, we were a great riding family. And when I had the opportunity through my business, I was working for one of the biggest recruitment companies in the world, and it was Canadian, and they were buying back a lot of their franchises in Europe. So I ended up coming over here for 1 year, and I thought, great, I will get to see Europe on an expense account. I had 18 cities in the UK, 4 in Switzerland, 5 in Germany. Our head office was Monte Carlo. So I got to see all of Europe on an expense account and thought, wow, I'm here, and I'm going to get away from horses, and I'm going to be free and whatever. But again, if you have a love and a dedication, within 2 weeks of arriving in London, I was teaching at the Knightsbridge Barracks in the middle of London. And then I ended up running one-day events in Kensington Palace Gardens, and I did it all as a secondary type of thing. But because I had such a love and such a depth of knowledge, I found that I picked up new friends. I was accepted immediately into all sorts of areas of the horse world. So it gave me a wonderful life to go alongside my business world.
Now, what steered you then into dressage, and what was the shape of British dressage, if you will, at that time, Desi, that inspired you to get so involved and so motivated into steering it in a new direction?
What happened is that, as I said, I came here to get away from horses, and of course you never leave your passion. And I did lots of little things, but then I went to a lunch at Olympia, which is the biggest horse show certainly in Europe, if not the world, and I met Jenny Lauriston Clark. And that was in the early 80s. I was just in the midst of leaving the company that had transferred me there and setting up my own business. And I met Jenny, and I listened to her passion for dressage. As a child, I took lessons from Podolsky because he would come to be in Montreal with George Jacobson, who was head of our federation, and etc. So, and my aunt Barbara Kemp, had been at the Spanish riding school. I believe she was there for 6 months and was one of the first females ever to be there. And my godmother was Leslie Vanderplatz, and again, she was one of Canada's first dressage riders. And so I did have a base of dressage, but it just sort of took over when I met Jenny. And I started sponsoring her, and I sponsored her for 18 years in the end through my business.
Oh, interesting. And then, of course, you obviously had a 30,000 feet view of British dressage at that time, Desi. What did that look like to you?
I'm sorry, what? What did I do?
Yes, the view you had of British dressage at that time.
Well, they were very much dressage in this country. I mean, the UK has the most fantastic background of hunting and of racing, and the spin-off of that meant that we had the best eventing and show jumping team in the world for years and years and years. And we had the most bold thoroughbreds that just as a spin-off from both of those things, the hunting field as a place to test the horse, but the breeding of the wonderful chasers and, everything from racing, we automatically had world supremacy. We did not have world supremacy in dressage. We were very much the poor relative. And we were way behind. My first job that they asked me to help out with was to come on to the Olympic fundraising, which was fantastic. That's where I met Mark Phillips, who's now one of my best friends and has been since then. And we did the fundraising, and in those days, dressage was terribly poor. I mean, we had people that raised £10,000 for a dinner in eventing or in show jumping and dressage. We had, one or two people that would go off and give a lecture demonstration and only raise £500. And in 1987, I was dancing on the dance floor at the Grosvenor House Hotel, and I had just started on to the Dressage Marketing Committee, and the then chairman of the British Horse Society tapped me on the shoulder. His name was Peter Fennick, and he said, do I understand that you've joined the marketing committee of Dressage? And I said, yes, that's right. I'm so excited. It really is. He said, good. He said, we've approved £100,000 today to secure the UK having their first ever European Championships at Goodwood in 1987. And he said, I knew that you had the right drive and that I know I can pass the responsibility on to you to find the sponsor, which ruined my evening, but he said made his a pleasure. And actually, I met someone that night called Mark Barker, and the two of us went about, and we ended up bringing in Polly Peck. And Polly Peck came in with £150,000 and sponsored the European Championships at Goodwood in 1987. And I guess I never really looked back after that. I was hooked, and I was lucky because they then asked me at one point to join the main dressage committee. And I remember phoning my mother in Canada, and she said, well, I hope they can find a job for you because they're not exactly going to ask you to write the next dressage test. And I said, well, they say they do, Mom. And, of course, it just went on from there. In 1990, they encouraged me, and I did not want to take over running the supporters of dressage. And because I was so shy, I didn't want to stand up and talk to, 15 people at the AGM. But anyway, the Mrs. Steele, Bobby Steele, who owned Dutch Courage and sponsored all of Jenny's big horses, had owned all of Jenny Loris and Clark's big horses over the years. They sort of dragged me in, and we had 200 members. And I remember someone saying, you'll never get a supporters club together until you start winning Olympic medals. And I thought, I'll show you. And again, we ended up with 3,000 members, and we were the biggest support group. And I ran that from 1990 till 1996. And we expanded. I mean, the first night I said, what we need is headphones maybe, and we didn't even have the money. And I had to lend them the money to set up headphones for 6 people. And then I would talk. I love talking people into things, and I would get Nick Williams or I'd get Mariette Vitage to talk to my members. I ended up with the headphones going all over Europe. We ended up with 80 headphones, and I would go to an international. I would book the whole side of the arena. I would go and get Mariette Vitage. I'd get all of those top names, Stephen Clark, and they would sit and they would talk on the headphones. And that's how we trained our judges. That's how we got people to get the bug. I mean, I know they used to laugh at us, but I got the last laugh because they realized that all of a sudden Great Britain was really a force to be reckoned with.
Well, that's certainly the case now, but during this process of promoting the sport at these levels, at the higher levels too, Desi, you've always also watched the young people and the lower levels, emerge and pick up momentum in a way that, you could only dream of, because it all begins at grassroots, right?
When I took over, what happened is I ran the supporters from 1990 to 1996. And then 1996, had been on the dressage committee for 2 years, and I was standing down to set up the supporters of breeding, thinking I could do the same thing. I don't believe you stay around anywhere too long. You get in, you do your best, and you get out. Has always been my policy, and I always move on. My heart may remain somewhere, but I believe that you have to let other people have their way as well. And so what happened is I was standing down from the main committee when they came and said dressage is in trouble. They'd lost a lot of money. There'd been a big sort of upset with the British Horse Society. We had world-class performance funding coming in. The British Horse Society was a charity, and the UK sport could not give money for the elite athletes to a charity. So there was a big breakaway, and unfortunately, the one thing that really lost out is the horse that we love so much. but I did not lead the charge, but I inherited the charge. Eventing had already left, the Pony Club had left, and things were very much on the change. The BSJA had always been its own person anyway. What the history here is that in 1923, show jumping in this country started, the BSJA, and I actually looked up the figures somewhere today to try to get them for you. But, I mean, the FEI started before that. Then there was the BSJA. And then what happened is that the British Horse Society started in 1947. And in 1948, with the onset of badminton, horse trials became its first entity. And the BHS said, look, we've got offices, come on along. And so they took over had an office within the British Horse Society. And then it wasn't until 1961 that the same thing happened to dressage in this country. And again, the British Horse Society said, come on, we've got an office, come in and join us. So that we were all under the British Horse Society. And that went on very happily for a long time. But what I inherited, I had to take over as a director of the British Horse Society in 1996, so that year, to try to get dressage back on a financial footing because it was as good as bankrupt. And we got it turned around in 6 months. We got it 60,000 quid profit in the first 6 months. It was just a matter of managing it like a business. And to be honest, I had no confidence in my own ability. I knew I had run my own business and I'd been in recruitment all my life, but I wasn't sure that I had transferable skills to run something else. And actually, it was wonderful for me because when I got in there, I realized that I could transfer the skills I had. And we took it around, we turned it around. And because it was bankrupt, we had very little opposition. Everyone was delighted to have someone take it over. And there was myself and 2 other people, and we just had a ball. We really worked so hard. We loved it. We turned it around. And then what happened is that the board said, well, you've turned it around. Now we have to go to the membership and see if they want to be like the rest of the disciplines and stand on our own 2 feet. And I said, that's fine, but, I've done what my remit is, and I've got to go back to my own business. And what happened was that they said the membership want to go on their own, but they want you to head it up because they know that you've already turned it around and that there's going to be a lot less problem rather than putting in a new board. So I agreed to take it on for 1 year. I wrote a letter to the membership, and I got £64,500 in Founder Life membership fees. And from there, we then took it as of 1998 onto our own completely. We had to leave all our money, all our reserves behind with the British Horse Society. But what is perfect and which people today don't even, would love to have is we had a complete clean slate. We actually had a greenfield site, and we could set the whole sport up from scratch, which is what we did.
Well, that's fantastic, Desi. It's amazing, where you've come in and what you've done to this point. What would you say that you've seen in the quality of horses in the UK since when you started there up to now? You noticed a big difference, and is that really improving?
Can I tell you, we are so lucky in this world. Now, when we talk, obviously I'm Canadian, I'm from Montreal, and, the thing wrong is that Canada is such an enormous country, as is the U.S. Now, I was able to take a greenfield site. We set up our constitution. We looked at the problems. We'd had a chairman that had been head of the sport for 20-some-odd years, and there had been no secession, no voting, no nothing. And at the same time, that person ended up, because they stopped riding, they ended up head of selection and the chef to keep. And that all 3 jobs were in one person's hands. And what we needed was transparency in a new system. So I put together a fantastic board. Stephen Clark, lots of those people that are really well known in the sport all came to our aid. I was the business person. I have business and enthusiasm, and the rest of them had the knowledge. And we put together a completely new article of association. We put it that as a chairman, I could stay for 9 years, but I could do 3 terms of 3 years. No other director could do more than 2 terms of 3 years each. Then everyone has to stand down. They can stand again for election the next year, but they have to be down for 1 full year, so that no one gets complete control, so that everyone has an opportunity. We then set up the board structure, and we broke it down that we had, one person on the board responsible for each area. So Stephen Clark came in. He was head of judges. Jane Kidd came in. She was head of international and selection. So I had the best people, most respected people in the world in this country, and I was able to put them all in key positions. And then they would build their committee under them of the great and the good in that area, and those committees would come forward with their suggestions, and that chairman would bring it to our board. So our board did not have complete control of the sport, but if the judges had a suggestion and it was properly monitored and properly presented, we obviously just, approved it. And that's how we grew. We also have fantastic people in this country that believe in the sport and live and give hugely towards helping us as we go along. I was given the opportunity I ran the World Cup at Horse of the Year in the early 90s. And, if you take a look, when I was head of the supporters, what we needed to do was the people around the little shows in the north of England could never get an international judge. It was too expensive. So the supporters would pay for a judge, and we would bring them and we'd let them go to 3 shows, and we'd pay their airfare. That's how Tron Asmir, who's now head of dressage at the FEI, he came over like that. So did Christoph Hess. All of these people that are now great friends and really helped the UK develop, well, the supporters brought them in and gave them their first opportunity here. So there's all these things, they all come home to roost. But also what happened when I was running dressage, Simon Brooks Ward said, okay, what would you say if we gave you dressage to music, an actual World Cup qualifier at Olympia? I said, that's 5 weeks from now. And he said, yeah. And I said, how many seats? He said, 7,000. I said, let's see what I can do. Now, the first thing I was able to do was fill all the boxes with the people with the black tie and, and those were all the companies and stuff like that. And then we wrote letters from the bottom of our hearts. We wrote emails. We have a regional structure. We got the regional structures. We said we'd help them hire buses, coaches, and they would bring people in. And we got 5,800 people 5 weeks later at Olympia.
Wow.
We've got the most... What people have to understand is it's a lot easier than it would be in North America, because you look at London, Edinburgh, which is the north and the south of this country, and those are only 400 miles apart. It's like Montreal, Toronto. It's like Toronto, New York. It's like Montreal, Boston. It's a very small area.
Well, you're quite the fundraiser and quite the delegator, too. I think that sounds really interesting to have put the jobs into very capable hands and different hands for different jobs. And do you think that the result of that really has been, in general, a higher quality of horses in your country? And, what do you think about the number of Grand Prix riders in the UK and about, who might be in line for the next team?
Well, see, one of the things we did is, because we're business people, a couple of us that did that, we tried to see the bigger picture. Okay, so I'm going to say like, we looked at our sport, and we locked ourselves away in a hotel for 3 days. We got the hotel to give it to us for free. They happen to like dressage. And I love doing that. That's my strength. And we locked ourselves away, and we said, okay, let's take a look at the sport. And, like, we had 8,000 members when we were a member of the British Horse Society, but when we actually broke away, we only got 5,300 that came with us as the hardcore. And then we looked at, okay, if we take a look at our national championships, only 3% of our members get to the nationals. So what happens to the other 97%? So then we had things called regional finals. So we turned around and we said, let's make these regional finals really special occasions. So that if someone gets to the regional final, that is a championship in itself. We called it a champion. We made it a big occasion. We had wonderful sponsorship in John Chew and Shell Gas. And we made a party, and of course, I love the parties. We had a party at every regional champion. So automatically, that took in another 20% of our members, and only 3% of the whole population gets through to the nationals, but we've just looked after a much bigger percentage. We then turned around and we said, okay, and what do we do with the people after that? We set up area festivals. And we said, if you can take an affiliated test that you've ridden that's between 58% and 62%, you can take that and show that, and we have now the area festivals for you. And we got a big sponsor in Pet Plan in that, and we just took off around the country. So that was another 40% of our members. So all of a sudden, we have got 60% of our members being able to go to a party. Okay? And I say a party, I mean a high event where they can aim for. Then when I took over, young riders under 16 were not allowed to ride dressage, and no ponies were allowed. Well, I opened that up. If the pony's good enough, let it come in. I'm still getting stick today about that. But I think if a pony can do well, why not? And under 16s, we had Egon von Greyerz. They set up Birds, which is the British Young Riders Dressage Scheme. And Egon went abroad with our young riders. He saw that these other countries had fantastic training. He went to his friends. He raised the money, and he put in a training system. And, of course, Birds today is still feeding our whole young rider movement. Okay? We then, ponies, we opened that up. At the same time, the paras, we had always allowed in British dressage, or dressage as it was before, that no matter what disability a rider had, everything would be overseen if they wished to ride dressage. So we already had a lot of the para riders riding in dressage, but with the onslaught of world-class funding and everything, all of a sudden there was para dressage. So I had para dressage come under British dressage as I ran it. And, of course, they ended up with masses of medals, so it certainly helped with our funding as the overall sport greatly, I have to tell you.
So in all of this, Desi, the standard of dressage and the horses that Heather was just alluding to was, that obviously has moved up a notch. And as you now get towards selection for some major championships, you've got the European Championships coming up shortly. You've got the World Equestrian Games here, of course.
We've got every single, Carl Hester came from the Isle of Sark, and the Isle of Sark has no cars and has no transport. It only is horseback. And Carl learned to ride bareback on a pony as a child. And then he ended up coming to England, and he was riding at the Fortune Center, and he had real flair and everything, but he had nothing behind him. And we put up something called talent spotting, and he was the first person ever to be talent spotted. Okay? Then you look at Emma Hindle, and you look at Laura Bechtolsheimer, and you look at Marie Alberg. Now, obviously, Alberg and Bechtolsheimer are born with dressage in the blood because of Ferdy and Dr. Bechtolsheimer. But Emma, they all came through ponies, young juniors, young riders. They've been with us. They are absolutely born and bred British, which we've never, ever had before. Even Fiona Bigwood, another one that came up through the ponies. So we are knocking on the door with all of these people that have come through our system now, and that's in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, that really is an amazing story, Desi, how British dressage has emerged now onto the world stage with a lot, with the force of, and as you say, these are British bred. These are, they're all made in England, the horses and the riders, and it really speaks to the energy and the determination that you've had behind this. And we've really enjoyed hearing about it, Desi, today, because I think people know you well in England, but I think in the wider world of dressage, I think this is an opportunity to also speak about what you've done and how it can apply to other countries. For example, over here, how maybe some of the programs that you mentioned to me before, there's some that really could translate to other countries and in order to grow the sport.
What we did, we put in the committee structure, we put in the training, we brought in foreign trainers. At the same time, we got world-class funding and could afford to have a trainer like Konrad Schumacher and all of those. But also what we did is we tried to analyze why people were afraid to come into dressage. And the first thing we did is said, we allowed them, I call it a ticket to ride. We call it class tickets. We allowed them to have 6 tickets to ride. They could pay £6 a ticket, and they could buy 6 tickets, and then they could opt to ride in an affiliated dressage against anyone. And these people came in and thought, oh, my goodness, they're not snobby. They're people just like me. And look at me. I'm in the big time, and I've just got, a 62%. So all of a sudden, people came and tried that, and it really worked. At the same time, we had a financial difficulty in the beginning, and we thought there's so many people out there that cannot afford us to raise our levels, we'll lose our membership. So we set up a levy, and that levy was £2 a class. It was actually £3, and I phoned today and found out it's now £2. You never let a levy go once you've got it. But what it is like a rider like Carl Hester, who's a professional, may ride 10 tests a week. Well, he should pay an additional £2 per class, and he then is paying as he's using the system. And if there's a little kid that's a secretary and has got a little DIY yard, and she only rides once every 3 weeks, then she should only pay for that one class. So we had this levy system, which is I called pay as you go, and that worked. Then we turned around and we did the restricted. Now you've got amateur owner in the States. Okay?
Yes.
And I grew up in amateur owner division and knowing how successful it was, but we could not put that through. Believe me, Sandy Phillips and myself and lots of people that knew the system tried and tried and tried, and I never got that through my board. They felt it was elitist and they also felt there was a gray area, although I know in North America, amateur owner really does sort itself out. But in this country, there can be someone that may have an office job. They may have 2 horses. They may have another 3 stables that they rent out to a DIY. They may then do a bit of teaching. So the waters are muddied as to what's their profession. So we put in a restricted and an open division. And restricted means you're riding at that level and you've never been able to ride at the level above it. So that you are competing against like-minded people. We stopped the professionals coming in. We graded our riders from 1 to 10, and the 1 are the international riders, and we didn't let them ride in preliminary, novice, or elementary. They cannot start until they're riding at a medium level, so that all the ones at the lower level get a chance to ride themselves, and they're more against like-minded people. So they're encouraged. They don't feel deflated because they're so far behind.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Well, that's so absolutely important. Well, we're running out of time here, Desi, but we're going to have you back on the show when we've got more time because, it's really exciting what's happening over there in Europe, and we enjoy listening to you and your enthusiasm, of course, which is very contagious. And so we're going to get you back on the show here later in the year. And I wish you all the best, Desi, and I thank you so much for spending time with us. And good luck at the European Championships. Hopefully the British will, rise again, and you'll be on that podium.
you watch this space. It's the first time ever we are going into a Europeans with the chance of an individual medal.
Well, that's wonderful.
As well as team.
Well, terrific. Well, the very best of luck to you, Desi, and
Thank you.
Stay tuned. We'll have you back on again.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Well, wow, what a person she is, and a go-getter, and what energy she's got, and just really interesting, and they're just super lucky to have her over there in the UK, aren't they?
Well, they really are, and it just shows if you've got that kind of energy and drive and enthusiasm, what can be achieved.
Absolutely. Well, really great luck to her and what's coming up for British dressage in the future.
Yes, and we look forward to seeing what medals they come away with from the European Championships in just a few short weeks' time. All right, well, we're going to take another break now before we get to training tip of the week and give our sponsors KPP USA a moment to promote their products here on the Dressage Radio Show. So stay tuned and we'll be right back with Heather's training tip of the week.
Well, if you're a regular listener to the show, you know we talk a lot about Kentucky Performance Products, and that's because they are a name you can trust to give you the most value for your supplement money. Kentucky Performance Products offers supplements designed to target specific problems and are made with high-quality ingredients included at effective levels. The company's supplements are intended to complement, not compete, with your dressage horse's current feeding program, guarding against over-supplementation, and each product is backed by sound research and a money-back satisfaction guarantee. And today we'd like to talk to you about Nalox, the original equine antacid. It's recommended by veterinarians and leading horsemen as a way of maintaining a healthy stomach, which reduces the risk of ulcers. Nalox can be given daily to horses exposed to stressful conditions or as needed when shipping, competing, or during stall confinement. You can learn about Nalox and all the products at Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com. That's Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com.
Well, thanks again to our sponsors, KPP, from here in Kentucky. And we're coming now to Heather's very popular training tip of the week. What have you got for us this time, Heather?
Well, I have kind of a simple concept, but I think an important one, and two parts. One is that when you are learning, and of course we're all learning until the day we die in this sport, we're never finished. And as you're learning in dressage, I think it's important to just think that you should question everything. Even if something that you have been told was said or printed by the greatest master in the whole world, I still think it's important to just, as each individual out there learning how to do this, should question everything so that you learn it into a deep part of your brain or in a deep part of you that really makes sense and you really understand it. Rather than just saying, well, I'm doing it because I read it or I'm doing it because I was told. If you learn something, do it. If it makes sense, then you can understand it at a level that it's almost like you can sort of invent the feelings from the instructions yourself. And so that's the second part that I like to think about is I think we're all out there also to kind of reinvent our own wheel. And horses have always been horses ever since the beginning of time. They've always had the same language, the same psychology, and dressage is always going to be built on the same training scale, rhythm, suppleness, impulsion, engagement, straightness, collection. That's always going to be the same, and you can read those things and you can try to do them, but I think you still have to, by questioning everything that you read or learn or try, get to the point where you can kind of reinvent that yourself. As if no one ever told you about the training scale, you can come to the point where by learning and experiencing and questioning things and learning from how your horse is responding to you and how that you communicate back and forth, that you kind of end up, in a sense, inventing it yourself again. And you can say, wow, well, that's what the people before me have said, or that's what this master in history have said. And I think that's an important thing to kind of have in mind, that you don't have to be told how it's going to go, but you can question everything to the point where you can get to it on your own. Does that make sense to you, Chris?
Yeah, it does, and it's interesting. I mean, like yourself, I've been around the world and I've listened to different people, different cultures, different trainers, different disciplines, and everyone has an opinion and style, and forebearers and the masters of classical dressage and so on over the years. But I think the key, as you say, is to question all the things that you learn and pick from them. It's kind of picking the cherries, isn't it? And what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And while it might have been a standard protocol or procedure back in the day, with that system, there may be just something you can pick from it. But you have to, as you say, challenge your own thought process and how you interpret that to work for you and that particular horse.
Well, I think that's right. And I also see one of the problems I see with people who maybe don't think so much that way is they might pick a rider who tends to win a lot, a popular professional in their area or in the world, and they might emulate things that rider does without really understanding why, and or the how underneath it, or have had the same foundation as that rider has up to that point, things like that, and they can end up sort of imitating things that they're not really sure why or how, but they do it because maybe a certain person is out there winning a lot and that's what they see them do. So I think even if you do see it performed at whatever it is that you're looking at, how a horse is balanced, or how a horse's frame is, or how the rider sits on the horse, if you think that you like it, you can try it, but just question things until you know the why and the how behind it.
Yeah, I think that's very important and a very good tip, Heather. And I think there's always going to be questions. How else do we evolve if we don't challenge ourselves and our thinking behind these practices? Because there are so many ways to what's the expression, to crack a nut, or
to skin a cat. I hate that one, but they say to skin a cat. I would never skin a cat. So I think that was kind of what I had in mind for the training tip for today.
Well, thank you, Heather. Again, make sure you check out all of Heather's training tips, which are also on our Horse Tips Daily show too. I think Glenn has adapted quite a few of them, Heather, so keep them coming, and we'll repurpose them so people get a chance to listen to those on more than one show.
Well, and my request, too, is the more listener emails we have or feedback, the more I might be able to kind of give training tips that our listeners are interested in. Otherwise, I just kind of have to guess what people might be looking for, what sort of advice they'd like. So, if I get some feedback, it would be great for me to know kind of where to direct my training tips. So feel free to give us some feedback.
Terrific. Well, speaking of feedback, Heather, you did get a response, didn't you, from your friend up there in Sweden, who you replied to a short while ago on the show, just a few episodes ago, from Annie, and I think she wrote back to you a much longer email this time, and obviously you'd given us some food for thought.
Well, I did, and she sent a nice email with some great pictures of her horse and how they're doing, and if I could pull that up on my computer right now, Chris, which I don't have it in front of me, it's a long email. The gist of it was that she thought the advice was really super. She has some spooky horses, or one in particular, that she had questions about if she should take this horse out to competitions until the horse got more used to being at competitions and stopped spooking. And my advice was that I would do more of the basic work and the groundwork and the schooling at home, where the horse isn't so stressed and isn't so under pressure. And advised her to do that kind of work at home, and then when she had better skills or better tools in the horse, to grab the horse's attention, even at home, by sort of increasing demands there, then to go out to the show ring again and try it where it's, the pressure is on. And she just responded with the answer that she was really happy to hear that. She had that in mind, and it's pretty much what she thought too, but she liked to hear that what the pros think, and that it was going to help her a lot in deciding to just keep it that way, schooling at home and gaining a lot of trust and confidence in her horse. And they would go back out when she thought she was ready. So that was nice to get a reply back from her and to hear what she thought about my advice. And was happy to help her out with that.
Well, terrific. Thank you, Heather. And as Heather said, keep those questions coming and suggestions for content. We are always looking for your ideas. We want your participation in the show so we know what it is you're interested in at all levels of the sport. So keep those questions coming. Well, that's about it for our training tips and emails this week, Heather. But we do have some great, exciting giveaways for 4 great prizes for the August Horse Radio Network giveaway. And they're free. You just go to the website and sign up. And those 4 great prizes are one is from Equestrian Collections. There are 2 $50 gift certificates. Equestrian Collections, who bring the whole world of whole universe of equestrian shopping to your fingertips at a price you can afford, and they can be found at equestriancollections.com. And from our friends at Kentucky Performance Products, they're offering 75-day supply of joint armor, a scientifically based formula that provides your horse with the building blocks necessary to maintain healthy joints throughout his lifetime. For more information about their products, you go to kppusa.com. And the other giveaway is from KBC Horse Supplies. KBC has donated a very nice triple-stitched leather halter with a custom nameplate, which sounds absolutely wonderful. This is the same top-quality halter that they sell for all their famous racehorses in Kentucky. KBC is the local Lexington company with the worldwide reach, and they can be found at kbchorsesupplies.com. If you go to dressageradio.com and click on the giveaway banner, which is on the right-hand side of the page, you can enter. It's free. It's easy. So sign up to win, and we'll be choosing the winners at the end of the month. So don't hesitate to go. There's 4 wonderful prizes there that are being supplied by very generously by our sponsors, Equestrian Collections, Kentucky Performance Products, and KBC Horse Supplies.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And don't forget, you can also follow our show notes at dressageradio.com. And again, we'd love to get your feedback. You can leave a voicemail or an email. You can email us at chris@horseradionetwork.com or me at heather@horseradionetwork.com. And the Dressage Radio Show has a fan page on Facebook, and there's a link to the page on our website. You can also follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. And you can read my blog and get information on my clinics, and 5 of which are coming up next month, at heatherblitz.info. And we would like to thank our sponsors, Equestrian Life and Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com.
All right, and that's Equestrian Life, the official social network of the Horse Radio Network at equestrianlife.com. And I should just mention, Heather, later this week I'm going to be filming for Equestrian Life. We're going to be covering the U.S. Hunter Jumper Association's International Derby Finals, the Hunter Jumper Derby Finals being held at the Kentucky Horse Park, and that's going to be streamed live on the web. So that's quite exciting. We're looking forward to that, covering those finals. It's a 2-day competition. Again, go to Equestrian Life and follow that. We have a lot of live events and more to come, Heather, so it's very exciting what we're doing there with our presenting sponsor of the Dressage Radio Show. But speaking of what's coming up, tell us a little bit more before you disappear for a few weeks, Heather, about where your clinics are going to be held as you set off on tour here momentarily.
Right. Well, I'm going to 5 different locations in the States, and I start next week. And I'm starting at Dancing Horse Farm in Lebanon, Ohio, which is near Cincinnati. And then I'm going to be going from there to Franklin, Tennessee, which is just a suburb of Nashville, Green Pastures Farm there. And after that to Folsom, Louisiana, just a little tiny bit north of New Orleans. Then from there to Houston, Texas, and then and those 3 are locations that I've been before. And then I have a new location starting this time, and that is going to be out in Somis, California at Spirit Equestrian. So I'm very looking forward to meeting some new riders and getting them started, and definitely seeing some of my more regular riders. And I'd love to meet anyone who wants to come also and audit the clinics. And there's usually time during lunch breaks to have question and answers, and you can learn a lot from auditing as well. So hope to see a bunch of people turning out there.
Well, that's exciting, Heather. We really wish you the best of luck. That's a great tour, and I wish I could catch up with you. But if I can, I will. But I know that you're going to be heading towards some Mexican food, and I know you like Mexican food, right?
It's my favorite. I just love it.
Well, I'm sure you don't get too much in Denmark, though. I hope you enjoy that, and we certainly going to miss you for the next few weeks. But we'll catch up with you on your trails, and we'll catch up with you when you get back. And if anyone wants to get those dates, you can go to Heather's websites to make sure that you know where those clinics are going to be held that Heather just referred to. And how many lessons did you say that you're going to be giving over this next few weeks, Heather?
The whole tour, I think there are 112 lessons. So it's I'm going to have to do some care with my vocal cords because they will probably be just about finished by the time I get back to Denmark.
I know it challenges you, doesn't it, when you go on a long tour like that. But you take care of your voice, have a lot of fun. Good luck with that tour. And if anyone wants to again attend any of those clinics, go to Heather's website, heatherblitz.info. You'll find the dates and the venues, and you'll also be able to go along and meet Heather, and I'm sure, Heather, you'll be happy to give people your autograph too if they want to come along and talk about the Dressage Radio Show. Maybe we'll get some feedback too while you're on tour for some ideas from your clinics, from some listeners, and maybe pick up some new listeners.
Absolutely. I'll bring back as much as I can.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we look forward to hearing about that. So, Heather, until Reese and I meet again next week.
Good luck, and mind your writing.